was being gluttonous. It is what it is. Yes, like I felt this, compulsion that I felt like I couldn't control. But at the end of the day, there was a choice I was making that I got to say I didn't want to make that choice anymore. And I got to find the fault in me, take ownership, not victimize myself. Not say, oh no, I'm a victim and this is horrible, this is happening to me, it's not my fault. Take ownership and surrender it to someone else. So much easier than white knuckling through anything. What you fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I had this fear that I was never going to regrow my hair and I was going to die bald and I would have to wear wigs for the rest of my life, that's exactly what would have happened, because every time that I would have tried to implement something, in the back of my mind, I wouldn't be sold on it. I would have been like, this isn't working anyway. I'm just wasting my time. I might as well accept it.
Welcome to Her Desired Haven podcast, a community where we come together to discuss all things Jesus, family life, and faith. I am your host, LaShaundra. Thank you so much for joining me. Our next guest is a triple certified functional practitioner who's helping women uncover their true root causes of hair loss while reversing it naturally. After suffering from hair loss and thinning for 10 years and a decade of experience in specialty pharmacies, she was given no hope, therefore turning to godly guidance and ancient remedies for a real solution. Trained and coached by some of the most successful individuals in functional medicine, her students rewind the aging clock, finally feeling confident about themselves again, using nutrition, daily practices, and personalized supplement protocols. As the CEO of Bell Organics, her vision is a world where hopeless hair loss is a thing of the past, replacing stigma and shame with empowerment. Please help me welcome Saril Vasquez to the show. Hey, Saril.
Hi, LaShaundra. It's awesome to be here with you today.
Yes, thank you so much. How are you doing?
Oh, I cannot be better. I'm just going to give God thanks for that.
Yes.
Great.
Amen. So, Saril, many women struggle with hair loss and they might feel discouraged, hopeless. Can you share a little bit more about your hair loss experience and journey and what gave you hope to keep going, until you found a solution?
I have to give God the glory for all of that, because there definitely came a point in my healing journey where I had gotten just far enough, but not far enough. And by that, I mean, I was able to slow down the shedding. I was able to see some regrowth in the areas where I had lost it, but I still had this massive progressive thinning just all over my scalp. And I knew that there was something I hadn't discovered yet that was going to tip the scale in the right direction as far as reversing the damage that had been done that caused the thinning, which was a scar tissue. So I sat up in my bed one day, and the first thing I did was take my fingers and put it over my ears and try to push my scalp inwards, like up and down, folding the crown, checking for pliability. And it wasn't flexible at all. It was stiff like a rock. And that's when I cried out to the heavens, and I was like, God, I know that there's something I'm missing. Will you please just tell me what it is? And in that moment, I looked down at my phone and I started researching something I had researched a trillion times probably about scar tissue and how to help break it down. And I came up with a new aspect of the protocol that I was able to integrate with a lot of success. So personally, at that point, I had hair loss for about 8 years, a total of 10 years, but I had hair loss for 8 years before I had gotten to a point where I felt so hopeless, as you were saying. Hopeless to the point where I had been lying to myself, saying, I've tried everything. Right? It's such a common thing to say when you're stuck in an area in your life. And when I realized that that was a complete lie, I made a decision that I was going to figure out how to reverse my hair loss naturally, or I was going to die trying. Because at that point, I had been working in the medical field for a significant amount of time. I was friends with the doctors. I created a binder of labs, probably around 2 or 3 inches thick. It was so thick. I had a table of contents that I created, and I had put page numbers on all the pages just to help the doctors decode what was going on with my hair, just to be told there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is normal, and there's nothing we can do. So my friends that I had bought cookies for over the years said, sorry, there's nothing we could do except slow it down. So that's when I made a decision to really try everything. And I spent $75,000 that I did not have I refinanced my home. I took out loans on my credit cards through balance transfers. I had to buy a new car because the car I had was moldy. I did all of this and I kept spending, not knowing that what the end amount was going to be until I figured it out. And I did that for 2 years because I had this full conviction that I wasn't going to remain with the looks that I had at that point. It was just
Mhm.
so there are so many pictures of me with my hair extremely thin and I'm shamelessly showing it. And the only reason I did that so many times was because I said to myself, if I don't document it, if I don't take the pictures, if I can't show people where I was, no one is going to believe me. I know that this is reversible. I don't care what they're telling me. I'm going to do it and God's going to help me. I now dedicate myself to helping other women finding those solutions using diet, lifestyle changes, and personalized supplements. So I would say, to answer your question, the way to keep going is having extreme confidence, unshakable faith that you're going to get the solution or you're going to die trying, and you're okay with either one of
Thank you for sharing your story. You know, the binder thing that you just mentioned, that sounds like something I would do.
them.
Like, I can identify with that. I get you with this one. But I really admire though that you did not stop until you were able to find a solution. So I really admire that. It's incredible how God kind of designed the body to pretty much be able to like heal itself, right? With your work, you really focused on getting to the root cause as well as reversing the hair loss naturally. So what is some tips or like maybe some advice you can offer to listeners to get started with getting to the root cause if maybe they're experiencing hair loss and also reversing it naturally?
Yes, and for those viewers that are able to see this versus listen
Mhm.
to it, I do want to show a picture of what I used to look like, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this is what I used to look like. You can clearly see that my hair was extremely see-through when I held it up, and it was unable to grow long. And I had severe scarring on my crown as well, where my part was extremely wide. And that's what this looks like here. The root cause is multifactorial and it's different for different people, but we do have some usual suspects. Everyone always thinks, I have to find the diagnosis. Is it AGA? Is it PCOS? Is it TE? Because then I know if I have a shot of hoping to have my hair regrow. And the only reason they feel that way is because they've been indoctrinated to believe that.
Mhm.
Same way we've been indoctrinated to believe we have to chase the lab values to get better health. But how many times do we work on improving the numbers on a page for our labs, yet do not see the results that we're hoping to see? So, what I realized about the root cause is that when hair doesn't have sufficient blood that is rich in nutrients and oxygen reaching the follicle, that is when we're seeing miniaturization and when we're seeing that the hair no longer grows. But the mistake that I'm noticing in the status quo is that there is this misconception: as soon as the hair is invisible, they think it's dead. They say if the hair is scarred over, if the follicle is scarred over, you're done. There's nothing you can do. But hold on a second. Did we go in there and dig up the follicle and throw it out? Did we cut into it and damage it forever? No, it is still there. It's just dormant. And it's dormant because it's been cemented over. But what if we're able to break down that cement? When we cut ourselves on our skin, we get a scab, but that scab falls off and we have brand new skin underneath. Why can't that happen under our scalp? Why is the scar tissue growing? And so the scar tissue would be growing because there's some source of inflammation that not only has never been addressed, but is continually being agitated. And so someone might be listening to this and they'll be thinking, how can I know if I have scar tissue under my scalp? Is there a test for that? Well, first, remember, tests I don't think are necessarily the end all be all when it comes to hair loss and thinning, because to find scar tissue on someone's scalp, you would have to do a biopsy if you want to be 100% sure. Now, just because you biopsy that one place in the scalp doesn't mean with absolute certainty that you're going to find the same thing all over the scalp. And also, what is the conclusion we're coming to? Which what I mentioned before is the conclusion is that it's too late, and it's not too late, in my clinical opinion, based on what we see in practice. And so, when people have that progressive thinning, where they're noticing the hair on my crown isn't growing in as much, my part is widening, the hair above my ears is very thin, skull feels like it's growing bigger, my scalp feels really tight. If they put their fingers on their scalp and they aren't able to fold it, and there isn't flexibility, that's more of an indication that we're having some kind of growth, some kind of scar tissue under the scalp. Or if your hair isn't able to grow that long, or it's very see-through, those are the things that are indicating that that could be an issue. And so what is causing the scar tissue is the issue that needs to be discovered, because it could be a fungal overgrowth that's living on the scalp, and then your body's using scar tissue to help control it. It could be different things, calcifications, because you're living a very acidic lifestyle. Now, it could also be just not having enough blood flow there, because your body's consistently in fight or flight instead of rest and digest. So if you're constantly in fight or flight, where you're trying to run, you're in the state of being where you're high alert, you're alerted, you're ready to run for your life in a moment's notice, then that person who's chronically feeling that way, chronically anxious, they have cold hands and feet all the time, they're very sensitive to light and loud noises, hypersensitivity to lots of foods. There are many different examples. Have a hard time sleeping. That person could have less blood flow to their scalp, because their body is diverting blood flow to their core, because the core has more organs that are vital for survival. And so your hands and feet can survive in lower temperatures. Your hair is not essential for life. And so the body is intelligent. It does what it needs to keep you alive. That is the number one priority. And so it will do things like that to help someone live a longer period of time. So root causes are not something that I think can specifically be identified on tests. I think it's more, how are you feeling with your symptoms? What is the body saying as far as your symptoms are concerned, that is giving us an understanding of what's malfunctioning, which system is malfunctioning. Does the nervous system need to be supported, the endocrine system, the digestive system? All these different systems will manifest a cluster of symptoms that are showing us, if we can get this system working the way it's supposed to work, then we can put the body in a healing state where the inflammation stops, so the spreading of the scar tissue stops, the scar tissue can break down. And of course, there are things that we can do supplementally to make that process faster. But these traditional root causes, I think, are blinding people. And we need to start looking more at the function of the body versus a diagnosis.
Right. I really admire like just you in general and your journey and your story, because it's like you didn't accept no for an answer. You went to get certifications and you really invested in yourself and educated yourself so that you could help yourself. Like that's like I really admire that about your story. Are there any instances as far as the hair loss goes where you wouldn't be able to like assist or help? Like are there any situations where they wouldn't be able to have it reversed?
Touching on the seeking information and getting the certifications, I did want to say that the Bible commands us to do that. It says, seek knowledge, though it costs you all you have, seek understanding. And I clearly understand why that's in the Bible, because if you are constantly learning, it's very difficult to be exploited.
Mhm.
I got, I would say, to a certain extent, exploited during that process, because they saw I was a person that was in a lot of pain. I wouldn't say that they were intentionally, I wouldn't say anyone along my journey was intentionally trying to hurt me or take advantage of me. I want to say the system is broken. And the way that it doesn't work is causing an issue where we're creating $1 billion industry and a lot of people aren't getting the result that they're looking for with their hair. So I spent $20,000 on hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because one of the reasons I had hair loss was because of mold exposure, and I was just desperate to feel better. And so my hair was thicker every time I left that chamber. And I said, clearly there's a connection here. But what I never addressed was the fact that I had less than optimal oxygen circulating in my body because I was chronically inflamed. And if I had gone down that route first, then I wouldn't have had to spend the $20,000. I mean, I tell my clients to get liquid oxygen for way less than that, and we support the body with the real root cause, which is one of them, like inflammation. So inflammation, blood sugar balance, circulation of the blood and lymph, sleep, and gut health are real root issues that need to be addressed with hair loss and thinning. Now, if somebody, to answer your question, was no longer growing hair on their head because they were burned, they survived the fire and they were burned on their scalp, or they were in an accident and the accident caused a scar, or they had some sort of surgical incision or a severe infection where the skin is pussy, there are crevices in there, the shape isn't the same, the look isn't the same, the texture isn't the same, maybe there was necrosis. In those situations, I wouldn't feel confident to say that I could help. I wouldn't even say it's impossible, because I did hear of one person that was able to regrow hair even after they survived a fire. So I say a lot of things are possible for those who believe. You could move a mountain if you believe you could move it. I want to express with a lot of confidence that I was told there was no hope. I was diagnosed with AGA. At one point, they thought I had PCOS. I know for sure I had scarring, even though I never did a biopsy, and only because, just clinically speaking, the shape of my skull changed. I was growing big mounds that can still grow if I eat the wrong foods or get exposed to some of the triggers. And so I can say with confidence that that was part of the issue with me as well. And so they say when you have that, there's no hope. And so I just want to express to the people that are listening that you don't have to accept that either.
So how can someone identify when their hair loss is maybe normal and when it's more like excessive hair loss?
Yes. So when we see more than acceptable amounts of hair falling out, either when you're washing your hair or just day to day when you're touching your hair, when you brush your hair, technically that's called negative hair fall. And I see it a lot in private practice with people that have other symptoms that signify there's a high toxic load. I'll see nerve issues, I'll see floaters in the eyes, I'll see mucus, either discharge vaginally or in the stool. That's just scratching the surface. There's a lot of different other examples of that. But what happens is the body will almost use hair as a secondary mechanism to get rid of heavy metals, because everybody has heavy metals on their hair. And so it knows every time that it creates a new strand and it moves that strand to your scalp further on the surface of the scalp so that it can fall off, then it is creating space for a new hair strand to grow, which will pull heavy metals out of the blood and into that strand. And so the body is very intelligent in what it does. So we do want some hair to fall out. What they say, quote unquote, normal is 50 to 100 strands a day. But we know that people are normally sick. So it could be less. I would say it is of concern when you're seeing it's more than you normally shed, or it is more than the size of a dime, half a dime. It could be that small is what I'm trying to say. It could be that small. That could be your new normal. But it really depends on what else is happening in the body, and is it beneficial for your body to let go of more hair at that moment in time. I can say that in my private practice, I see people having exposure to mold have greater amounts of hair shedding. Or this one client comes to mind where it wasn't mold, it was a termite inspection that ended with a termite treatment. And right after that, she had excessive hair loss for the next couple of washes. And it was an episode where her body said, these fumes, there's a lot in the bloodstream. Let's dump stuff out. And it used that as a mechanism to support her during that time, because hair is expendable.
Would you say that gut health or like just internal health in general is very important, when reversing hair loss? Like, how important would you say gut health is?
I would say it is 20% of the problem. Let me rephrase. The reason I say that is because I mentioned earlier that the real root causes are blood sugar regulation, inflammation, circulation of the blood and lymph, gut health, and sleep.
Mhm.
If we're addressing all of these things, we can create a version of someone that is able to support healthy hair regrowth, a version of them that is prioritizing healthy hair regrowth, a version of
Right.
themselves that's not chronically inflamed. But at the same time, in the grand scheme of things, just really looking with a bird's eye view, the problem is 20% genetics and 80% environment, which means 80% is in your control. What you eat is part of the issue. People are out there intoxicating themselves, not with alcohol, with sugar, with gluten, and other substances that are toxic to them that maybe are not in their best interest to eat at that time. I have clients that they start off lactose intolerant, they start off not being able to eat dairy, we take it away from their diet, but then we're able to reintroduce it in small doses and they're okay. Same thing with eggs. But while they're dealing with potentially leaky gut, that's not something that's going to help them. It can make their body worse. It can make them more prone to autoimmune conditions. And so gut health is extremely important because it's literally where the body gets the nutrition that it needs to feed the cells. So the cells are able to function as they were designed to function and carry out all of the responsibilities that they should. Or it is that source where we are intoxicating ourselves and creating more poison in the body. So this is called an endogenous toxicant because we have toxins. So we have exogenous outside of the body, and those are toxicants. So the makeup we put on, the cleaning supplies we use that has chemicals in it, the pots and pans that we use that are not ceramic or not cast iron or not made of steel, stainless steel. All of these things are things that are entering our body. Even dust is a pollutant because it's not like we're living in homes that are furnished with 100% organic everything, cotton. It's polyester. It's and things are just in the home for so long and it breaks down into dust and we don't pee out dust. So we're processing that. We are human recycling machines. And it creates a burden on our lymphatic system. It creates a burden on our liver. It creates a burden on our kidneys. And all those burdens create damage to us. And so that is why people age as they get older, because they're just taking all the insults of the world, all the toxicants, everything. My grandmother died with hair on her head, and she was 1 month away from being 104. But when she was born, horses were the main source of transportation. Lots of dirt roads. And now people are getting hair loss so much younger. I was 24 when I first started having hair loss. And the reason it was triggered was because I got off of birth control. And so everybody has this triggering event, like this moment in time where something flicked and within their genetic code, the programming for excessive hair shedding or scarring began. But just because it turns on or turns up doesn't mean we can't turn it down. And with the way that we're able to do that is by minimizing the amount of toxicants we're introducing and enlarging our ability to detoxify by adding detox routines, being mindful of what we're eating. There are daily things that we can do to make a lifestyle that feels doable and easy for us that helps us age gracefully.
As a woman of faith, how did you manage to stay encouraged experiencing something, as women, hair loss, that could really shake your confidence, your self-esteem. As a woman of faith, how did you stay encouraged through your journey?
I was talking to God through the whole thing. You know how I started this story with me sitting up in the bed and screaming into the heavens? I did that because I believed God was with me through the trial. And I don't think that he would have given me or allowed me to have the faith that I had, that it was going to get resolved if he wasn't helping me through the process. And I think he allowed it to happen because He wanted me to please him with my faith, and he wanted me to be able to help other people and reach people in this moment where they feel hopeless and they feel afraid and they feel like they want to give up, and they need that inspiration and they need that reminder that miracles happen every day if
Mm-hmm.
we just choose to believe them. And so there were other struggles that I've overcome in my life. I used to have an eating disorder. I had an eating disorder for 20 years. And I was able to overcome some of the negative behaviors around that about 5 years ago. But there was still this part of me that wanted to binge eat, like maybe 2 years after normalizing my behavior more than I had before. And I remember being in the middle of eating the toxic food that I knew I shouldn't be eating, just binge eating on all this stuff, and not having the capacity to stop myself from ordering it or stop myself from doing this. And it was this fight because I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't stop. And so I was at the point where I'm eating the food and I couldn't even enjoy it. There's tears in my eyes because I was just so upset about the fact that I felt so helpless. And then I just remember in that moment, I looked up into something about looking up into the heavens. It's like he sees you. I looked up into the heavens and I was like, God, I surrender. I can't do this anymore. I can't live my life like this anymore. You need to totally take over and just do what you do. Forgive me for the sin of gluttony. Transform me through the renewing of my mind and just take this from me because it's been too long. And in that moment, I was healed. Like I just didn't have that necessity to do things. I was able to stop myself. I was able to have chocolate in the house and not devour it. And it just took that surrendering. And so I understood that the power of surrender is great. So often now in today's culture, there is this theme of self-sufficiency. There's this desire to be prideful and this desire to be self-sufficient and say, I did it. I figured it out. I can do it, as opposed to looking for the opportunity where we get to cue God in and we get to give him the glory for saving us time and time again. Because ultimately, everything that we have is because of him. Everything that comes into our life or comes out of our life is because he allows it. And so we should never really get to this point where we think it was just you that did everything, because you can lose it the minute you said that, if that's what God wants. And I think that one of the best parts about the Christian religion, because I'm a non-denominational Christian, is the fact that we get to ask for forgiveness. And I know that that's what some people feel a little hesitant about. They feel like, oh, they just want to shame you. They just want to make you think you're doing things wrong to control you. But I look at that in a completely different opposite way, because the one thing that separates a victim from a survivor and a thriver is that the victim is helpless and they're thinking like, oh, why is this happening to me? Poor me, everything is happening to me. And the victor and the survivor is like, where am I at fault? What can I do differently? What is the next step? And so as a Christian, us being able to say, what did I do wrong? Is there a better way? And look at the Bible and say, what is God teaching me to do differently that I'm not doing? And have it be so simple that we get to identify that and say, God, I'm sorry, take it from me. Like the healing could be instant instead of this like white knuckling and trying. And, I was being gluttonous. It is what it is. Yes, like I felt this, compulsion that I felt like I couldn't control. But at the end of the day, there was a choice I was making that I got to say I didn't want to make that choice anymore. And I got to find the fault in me, take ownership, not victimize myself, not say, oh no, I'm a victim and this is horrible, this is happening to me, it's not my fault. Take ownership and surrender it to someone else. That's the by far the so much easier than white knuckling through anything.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story, your testimony. Like, truly, I feel like that's going to help someone out there who's watching, who's listening, who may have experienced the same thing, or maybe they're going through, an eating disorder right now. And the fact that you came out on the other side and you're giving God the glory for it. It's not you saying I pulled myself up. It's like, no, God had to help me because I couldn't do it any other way. So thank you so much for just being open enough to share that part of your story with our community. I want to know what do you believe is the hardest lesson that you've had to learn in life?
That what you fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there's so many different examples of that in my life. A job I had previously, the supervisor that I had was afraid that I was going to outwork her because I was new and hungry and ready to make an impression. And she was old and tenured and didn't want to work that hard with sales, trying to match energy. And I found myself in a position where, because she was my supervisor, I had to communicate my plans for expansion in the territory. And whenever I did that, I would turn around and I would notice the ball got dropped with exactly what aligned with my plan. It was almost like that information was coincidentally being used against me time and time and time again, to the point where her supervisor noticed and she got moved to another part of the company and eventually left. So her fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy because she feared it and she did things around that made itself actualize. If I had this fear that I was never going to regrow my hair and I was going to die bald and I would have to wear wigs for the rest of my life, that's exactly what would have happened. Because every time that I would have tried to implement something, in the back of my mind, I wouldn't be sold on it. I would have been like, this isn't working anyway. I'm just wasting my time. I might as well accept it. And I would self-sabotage. But because my mentality was, I'm figuring this out or I'm going to die trying, you literally don't fail unless you give up. So you might as well not give up. So because I had that mentality, when something didn't work, it wasn't anything I attached a negative meaning to. Instead, it was something I attached a positive meaning to because I took it as an opportunity to learn. Why did it work? Why did it not work? How long did it work? How could this work for someone else? What are the ingredients? What did I feel? What is the body? What do we know about the body? How does that all make sense? What else could be implemented? How do we put this other piece of the puzzle together? And by taking that approach, and instead of doing what I was doing before, which was throwing random crap at the wall, waiting to see what sticks, which was really a waste of money, by taking this new approach, I finally was doing something different. And when you do something different, you can expect a different result. And I got the result with God's mercy because of the mentality, that faith. And I didn't fear that I was going to lose my hair. So, and one more story around that. My father, who's currently dealing with stage 4 renal failure, I put him on an herbal protocol. He was getting results. His vision improved. His blood sugar improved. He's no longer diabetic, but he still had this programming in his brain that natural medicine takes a really long time and he's really old and he doesn't have time and it's way too many pills and this doesn't work. Even though I'm showing him labs and all of that, he set up these expectations that set him up to fail. And he would just start self-sabotaging, not doing things, not wanting to be bothered, not believing in it. And then now he's not doing it well and he's slowly, things are slowly getting worse. So pray for my dad, anyone who's listening to this, because I'm praying for him too. I just saw him today and I want him to have a more positive energy towards fighting towards a longer life. But he is 84 years old, so he's had a good run. But the point is that he's self-sabotaging himself because he doesn't believe that it can work, even though there's proof of concept. He's sabotaging himself because he's making these expectations that are unrealistic, that it's just going to be a straight shot up and just getting easily discouraged, but it's because he doesn't have the conviction. And so that's why, and I told you there's a million other examples I could give you, but I'll stop there. But that's why it's very clear to me that what you believe will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, or what you fear.
Yeah, I really want to put an emphasis on that word. You said belief. Like your belief dictates your actions. If you don't, that's kind of like when they say like you're praying for something, you're asking God, help me with this or help me do this. And then you stop praying and then you like go and do behaviors that go against what you just prayed for. So it's like belief is powerful for sure. For sure. Just your mind. That's why we have to pray for God to renew our minds, to change our hearts, because if what we're thinking and we don't truly fully believe what we're asking for, how can we expect him to give it? Without belief, it's impossible to please God, right? So belief is so important. I don't think people consider that enough. What you
Yeah.
believe is important.
Without works, faith.
Exactly. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that you said that. And I will definitely be praying for your father as well.
I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. So there's a woman listening to this and she's given up hope on her hair. She's just given up, you know. What are some words of encouragement or like maybe some wisdom you can share to a woman watching or listening to this today?
Last night, I had a call with my girls. I have a cohort because the way that I help women is twofold. I do one on one coaching and group coaching, and then there's also a course, and it's all a combined effort to get them aligned with the way they're supposed to live their life to get the result. And the conversation that we had as a community was the fact that we have to create this roadmap of what a version of ourselves that can regrow hair looks like. There's no one listening to this that has not partnered with a practitioner that specializes in hair loss is going to be able to do this assignment correctly. What that could look like is, as we were doing the assignment, is identifying the triggers. So if you're eating sugar, gluten, dairy, corn, or rice, if you have exposure to mold, if you have some low grade chronic inflammation or low grade chronic infection that we can see based on your symptoms that are very common in women with hair loss. If you have symptoms of your hormones being out of whack, if you have symptoms of your immune system needing to be supported, if you're having digestive symptoms, if you are not sleeping well, like these are the things that are showing us that your body's being triggered. So we already know that if this is manifesting, then we cannot expect your body to regrow hair. Then we make a list of the improvers. What are the big needle movers? And now that's going to differ per person. I know in my practice, I don't just give everyone the same supplements. It's all personalized according to what's going on with their symptoms. I use labs only if I'm stuck after I do a lot of the cleanup work. That is basic to the operation. But we create a clear picture for what is going to move the needle in the right direction as far as everyone's own particular diet. When I was starting with my healing journey, I could eat nuts, but I couldn't eat them whole because I didn't have enough stomach acid. So if we're doing what's in the list of where we're avoiding the triggers, that's one of the things that needs to be addressed. So we're looking at what is that list of what the things that are improving your life that are really going to move the needle with your hair. And that doesn't look like putting minoxidil on your head. That doesn't look like oiling. That is superficial. That's not getting to the root cause, right? So that's not what that looks like. So we get clear on what the triggers are. We get clear on what's improving it. And then we get clear on how you get to live your life to keep the results that you have. So how are you eating? What are some low maintenance lifestyle things that you can put into your daily routine? Like, are you oil pulling? Are you sweating profusely? Things of that nature. And so when you have that and you're clear on what that looks like, to know whether or not you should give up on your hair means that you're doing absolutely everything to avoid the triggers, absolutely everything on the list of things that improve it. And you're eating the diet that is supposed to maintain your results and you're not getting anywhere. And even then, what all that means is that we're missing a trigger. So the way that I was able to regrow my hair was only because I had absolute conviction that the result was possible. That's the only reason why I have so many pictures. If you go to my website and you go to the testimonials page, you will see pictures of me, pictures of my clients, video testimonials. The only reason that is possible is because of this extreme conviction that maybe it's not for me, maybe it's not going to work, maybe my kind isn't reversible is completely out of the picture. We already discussed earlier what are some of the things that I feel I can't help with. Even though I feel like I can't help with them, I'm not going to say it's impossible. So we already talked about that. But for the woman who's listening to this and she feels like, oh, I've tried everything and nothing's going to work, you've never had that mapped out. You've never sat down with someone who specializes in this to really look at all the possible triggers. You've never sat down with someone who specializes in this. Maybe you sat down with your dermatologist. Maybe you sat down with a trichologist, but are they functional medicine practitioners? Did they reverse their own hair loss? To what degree? How long have they maintained it? These are the questions you need to be asking yourself. Because we're over here going to dermatologists that are bald, and then we're getting surprised when we don't get the results. Or when they're telling us, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do. Of course, they're going to say that with the absolute conviction because that's what they believe. They're not going to fight for anything more. They haven't had a rep come in and tell them there's a miracle cure. So that is the word of advice that I want to leave to someone who's feeling like she's tried it all. I've been there. And then somehow I figured out how to spend $75,000. So I promise you haven't tried it all.
Saril, thank you so much for everything that you shared. You've shared a lot of like just wisdom and knowledge with our community. Out of everything you shared, what is one thing you want our listeners to take away from our conversation today?
Something that I want the listeners to leave with is what we were talking about earlier about your fear self-actualizing. So I want them to be very intentional about the decision that they're making because you choose what you don't change. So if they want to choose living in the fear and focus on acceptance and move through that way, that's okay. Everybody has a different journey. But if they're listening to this and this title caught their eye, it's probably because they don't want to give up hope, but they might be living on the edge of fear. And so if you find yourself being that kind of person, I want you to align yourself with the reasons why you cannot accept permanent hair loss as a destination for you. Your reasons will come first and your results always come later. That's a straight up Tony Robbins quote right there. So when you get, like for me specifically, it was a breakup. I had just broken up with my ex that I thought I was going to marry. He cheated on me with a girl that was 10 years younger. Okay. I was 33. She was 23. Then I broke up with him. 6 months later, or 6 to 8 months later, I end up looking like the picture that I showed you. So I said to myself, is this going to be my story? Or am I going to fight for the life of my dreams? And I want to say, I did get married to an amazing man. So that story ended very well. I found him after I fasted for 40 days. I did 40 days, no sugar, gluten, dairy, corn, or rice. No dating apps, no luxury purses. And I said, like, God, am I going to get married? And he was like, just be content with where you are. And I was like, man, I'm going to be single till I'm 75. But because he said that to me, I stopped dating in the energy of, is he the one? Was being very present. And so I wasn't sabotaging anything with anyone by having that mentality because I was obeying his command, which was be content with where you are. And so I found my husband 10 days after he found me on a dating app. And within like a day or two of us connecting, God said, delete all the dating apps. And he was the one I kept talking to until he ended up moving here from Europe to, to date me. And then, we got married in less than a year and we didn't have sex. We waited.
Good.
If anyone was wondering. But yeah, so then it would be that. It would be learning to not be afraid of having the conviction, the confidence, and the faith, and understanding that the real cost is in losing hope, and to realize that their life, what is their life going to look like if they let the fear take over, and what is it going to look like if they never give up? And I think when they look at it that way, then they can understand that it's cost you way more to lose hope.
Saril, you've shared so much today, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Where can our community connect with you and learn more about your services?
Yeah, so they should go to my website, belcanics.com. So that's BELLECHANICS.com. I have a quiz there. I have a blog there. There's a training on the website as well. If they want to join my Facebook group, that group is called Reversing Hair Loss Naturally. So I'm on there live once a week answering community questions. So I'll be happy to connect with them that way as well. And I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. Volcanics is the name they should look for. So they can find me YouTube. They can find me on YouTube. I'm all over YouTube. There's a lot of podcasts that I've been on. So if they ever want to binge watch, they can go on there. And if they want a copy of my book on what it takes to reverse hair loss naturally, it's called Becoming a Belcanic. Because a Belcanic is a woman who masters her body mechanics to reveal her inner bell. So instead of a mechanic, she's a Belcanic. So if they want the book Becoming a Belcanic, they can go to my website, which is belcanics.com and / becoming a Belcanic. And then that will give them that capability to put their email in and download the book. And there they'll learn everything about how to eat, how not to eat, how to listen to their body. What could this all mean? And there's even an offer there, a free offer for me to make a little video for them based on the assignment in the book. If they do the assignment in the book, then I can give them a little bit of personalized information. So everybody should definitely go download the book right away. Don't think about it. If you're interested, you want to know what it takes to reverse hair loss naturally, go to belcanics.com / becoming a Belcanic.
Perfect. And I will include all your information in the description as well into our lovely community. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen and to watch. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.